delegations of high-level Washington Democrats and Republicans to a secret retreat, say to the Andrews Air Force Base, and all sides were insulated from backlash from the party's own activists. This group would not have an especially difficult time striking a comprehensive agreement on immigration reform or modifying Obamacare or a long-term budget accord. David Gergen would approve. So what he's saying. What this means is this is one of the nation's most preeminent political journalists is admitting that he and other members of his class adhere to a rather cynical ideology, the ideology of finding a midway point between a normal party with normal policies and proposals and intellectually bankrupt tribe of troglodytes that gets crazier and more morally repugnant by the day. The problem with in the view of Harris is that the pesky activists, which is another word for voters, they sometimes can get in the way. Candidates like Warren and Bernie Sanders suffer in this environment because their ideas are out of step with the DC consensus. They are automatically categorized as extremists, their ideas unworkable, all because they reject the midway point of mode of governments, which end up favoring actual extremists on the right. That's exactly what I've heard this from left-wing people. I've heard this from Jon Stewart, Carlos Maza, Cenk, a billion times. This is the thing that had been passed around. And the fact that we have a guy from Politico, the founder of Politico, saying this is just absolutely insane. And it's pretty funny. And also pretty satisfying. I do want to end on that note. All right, so yeah. I'm going to move on here to this very great piece here. I just want to break this down. Alex Spreen and his ode to the death of the rude press. The rude press. I love it. That's such a great way of putting it. And it's really why, and it seems so weird that people just get so pissed off about this, because it is, that's, to me, it's what journalism is supposed to be. And I think it comes from the same group of people who are saying these things about extremists and meeting in the middle, and the exact same thing we were just talking about. It's not about... It's about covering for people. It's about supporting your friends in the media, because the media is really part of that company town. That's what that vibe, I really think, is all about it. Yeah, so that's really interesting. Really very compelling in my opinion. And yes, this is how his narrative about the end of Deadspin, I think, which is definitely worth talking about. In April, Great Hill Partners, a private equity firm, purchased Gizmodo Media Group, the collection of websites formerly known as Gawker Media, from Univision. Great Hill leaders also acquired The Onion, changed the parent company's name to Geo Media, and installed a bunch of the CEO's washed-up cronies in executive positions, and spent most of the next few months alienating nearly all of the most talented veteran employees of the sites they purchased. In October, they abruptly shuttered Splinter, the left-leaning news and commentary site that's grown out of Univision's fantastically expensive and doomed experiment in millennial-focused media fusion. And obviously Splinter, we are very, very familiar with here on this show. They proceeded to blow up the widely beloved sports and culture commentary site, emphasis on the culture and commentary site that the people loves and the CEO kind of hated. Deadspin, first by instructing the staff to restrict their coverage solely to sports, and then by firing the site's longest tenured employee, deputy editor Barry Pachetsky, triggering mass resignations of the entire staff, which is pretty insane, by the way, that they just gave up their jobs out of principle, which you never really see, especially with these people who have kids and all that stuff. It's really very interesting. Deadspin was rude. This was almost its defining characteristic. It was rude by large to people who deserved it: amoral and venal team owners, predatory sports media personalities, bandwagon Warriors fans. Splinter was notoriously rude, just as Gawker was rude before it, to figures at the towering summit of influence and craven strivers who wished to join their ranks. I think that's what the press should be. It should be insulting. It should be challenging. It should be provocative. It should be antagonistic. In an earlier area of digital publishing, Suck was rude. I mean, just look at the name the site's founders chose for themselves. Back when online magazines were called high-minded things like Salon. This was Suck, which is pretty cool. The Village Voice in its heyday was pretty rude. Rolling Stone was often rude, except to Jan Wenner's friends. Mad was so rude that it only survived comic book censors by becoming a magazine. Some of America's greatest journalists and critics, from Ambrose Bierce to H.L. Mencken to Dorothy Parker, were decidedly rude. Rudeness is not merely a tone, it's an attitude. The defining quality of rude media is its skepticism about power and refusal to accept the niceties that the power depends on to disguise itself and maintain its dominance. It's often hard for me to imagine that anyone can grow up in this era and not end up doubting the competence and motives of nearly everyone in charge of nearly every American institution, but again, some of us grew up to be very wise. That's such a great point there. It's about power and challenging that power and making people question the way things are, which is so important, so potent, and so powerful. Like, that is what media, in my opinion, is supposed to be, and that's the media that I want to read. So shout out to Deadspin and Splinter for all doing that great work, and that's what I tried to really bring to Newsflash, especially, and still do. It was a lot easier with stories from Splinter, and being able to break down those stories and really exposing me, and hopefully you as well, to that point of view. I think it's very, very powerful. All right, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you soon.